welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, Xzone Radio TV. And for all the programming we have available for you 24/7, 365 on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit www.xzbn.net. Exonation, one of the most interesting topics today, and one of the topics that is certainly gaining more and more speed, is the topic of afterlife communication and the study of afterlife. Over the past, I've had the pleasure of not only having Roberta Grimes on the X Zone, but producing her show that was broadcast here on the X Zone Broadcast Network and is still on many of our affiliates. And one of the guests that she had on her show was Dr. Craig Hogan. Now, he has a Ph.D. He's also the author of Your Eternal Self. And I decided to ask Dr. Hogan to come on to the X Zone because, like I said, this topic is gaining speed. More and more people are talking about afterlife communication, afterlife visitations. And it seems that not only is the veil between this reality and the afterlife becoming thinner and thinner and thinner, so is the veil when it comes to people not only talking about the afterlife, but accepting the afterlife as a part of this reality. Dr. Hogan, as I said, is the author of Your Eternal Self, presenting the scientific evidence that the mind is not confined to the brain. The afterlife is a reality. People's minds are linked, and that mind affects the physical world. He is the president of the Afterlife Research and Education Institute, and he has been he has a physical mediumship circle with table movement and seance sessions. He has the remote viewing ability. He communicates with people in the afterlife. He teaches people how to communicate with the afterlife, and he has done successful ITC work. Joining me now is Dr. Craig Hogan. And Dr. Hogan, always a pleasure talking to you, sir. And thank you for all the wonderful work that you do and the awareness that you're bringing to the masses.
Well, thank you, Rob. It is something which is very close to my heart. We are, as you say, seeing a change in humanity, and are things that are opening up now that we just have to let people know about because we've got the facts. We know what the science is of the study of the afterlife.
How did you become involved in afterlife study, sir?
When I first found out that I have medium abilities and that I have psychic abilities, I realized then that the greater reality, the reality that's outside of this small piece of reality that we experience, is much greater, and that the people who have passed away from this reality have gone on to another realm. And so I began to become interested in communicating with them and helping other people to communicate with them. And so I started to develop methods of communication and study methods of communication, and we formed the Afterlife Research and Education Institute to try to help people to learn how to communicate themselves and to get the facilities that they need in order to be able to communicate.
I would imagine that one of the most common questions that you would be asked is, why are you so certain, sir, that we continue to live after the body dies?
Well, one of the reasons is that we know that the mind is not in the brain. So that's been established, and we know that from simple things like remote viewing. That we're able to sit down and we can focus on something that is thousands of miles away,
right,
and we can describe what it is. Somebody can put an object on a table and tell me I have an object on my table in New Jersey, and I can sit in my office in Illinois and I can tell them what that is, describe it for them, and identify what it is. And that means that the mind is not in the brain. It's not confined to the brain. And so that also means that when the brain ceases to function, mind keeps on going. And so we know that the mind is going afterwards because of the fact that people have communications with the afterlife, and we get messages back. We're getting hundreds of thousands of records of messages now. Some of these are on recordings. There was a medium named Leslie Flint from the 20th century who we have recordings of him sitting in a room and with just one person sitting there, and he would bring through their loved ones, that person's loved ones from the other side, and they would have conversations just like they were sitting at the breakfast table about their lives and about what was going on and what it was like on the next realm of life. And we have recordings of those now. Anybody can go and listen to those at the Leslie Flint Foundation or on one of my websites, adcguides.com. But they're available for anybody to listen to. So we've got the records. The people are communicating with us in a variety of ways. We have 16 different methods of communication. And so we're getting the records from them, and they are telling us the truths about the afterlife, about the reality of this life. And we're really, as you say, the veil is dropping, and we really are being able to communicate clearly with those on the other side.
Dr. Hogan, how different is the realm on the other side compared to how we have been led to believe the realm is on the other side?
Yeah, that's all fiction. There's a great mythology that's developed around what the afterlife is like. And the afterlife, when we go on to the next round, really it shouldn't be called the afterlife, because we're on a spiritual plane now.
Right.
The earth plane is a spiritual plane. So what we're doing is we're going from the earth plane over to another spiritual plane. But that spiritual plane is just like this one, and the reason is that it would be a shock to our systems if we went into another realm and it was very different. So the realm that we enter when we go on, when we drop the body and we go on, is just the same as this realm, except it doesn't have the negatives. And it has many things that are much more emphatic, much more impressive to us, to the people who pass over. For instance, there are colors that we don't see on this realm of life. There are sounds that we don't hear. There are experiences that people have there that they don't have on the earth plane. And so in those ways, it's even better. It's much better than on the earth plane. But none of the drawbacks are there. There is no death. There are no beginnings and endings, all of those sorts of things. So it is, some people, when they cross over, they think that they are just dreaming because the next plane of life is so much like this one that they don't realize that they've passed away. And so then they have to have people come and tell them. They have to be counseled to realize that they have passed away and they've gone on to the next plane of life.
If there's a next plane of life, sir, does that mean there was a previous plane of life that we existed in prior to this one?
What happens is that there is a higher self, and the higher self is who we are, and it is a bigger body. It has many selves in it, so there are many lives in this higher self. And the higher self has always existed. It had no beginnings. It will have no ends. But within that higher self, then there are individuals who will incarnate onto planes, such as the earth plane, and any of the other millions of other planes. And they will incarnate under those planes, and then they will become individuals. They'll grow up from infancy, and they will continue into adulthood if they live a full life, and then they will pass, and they will go back to the plane of reality that we have that's outside of this reality, the greater reality. And when they go there, then they are one with the higher self, and so then they can share experiences among the various people there who have had experiences on the earth plane. But we do grow from infancy into adulthood, and then we carry that on with us. So our personalities are exactly the same when we pass on to the next plane of life, and we do the same things, we have the same interests, and we gradually grow from there. And from there, then we become even more spiritually mature, more capable of using our mental faculties and using our spiritual faculties. And we then eventually can pass into being more like celestial beings. But we are the same person when we cross over that we are just before we pass away.
All right, so help me understand if I have this right. We have to take a commercial second, so I'm going to commercial within a minute. So I'm just going to see if I can get this lined up correctly before we go to the break. So we've come here to basically learn, experience, and then we go to the next level.
That's right. So in other words, it's like going to grad school.
Ah, got you. All right,
So-
Doctor, please stand by. You and I have to take our first break. And Nation, my guest this hour is Dr. Craig Hogan. He's with the Afterlife Studies and, the Afterlife Institute. And if you'd like more information about Dr. Hogan, visit www.afterlifeinstitute.org. And we'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. I'm Rob McConnell. Don't go away. And welcome back, everyone. We're talking to our guest this hour, Dr. Craig Hogan. We're talking about afterlife studies and afterlife communication. If you'd like to find out more about Dr. Hogan, visit www.afterlifeinstitute.org. This all-knowing power, or this supreme being that we were talking about in the previous segment, would this be the mythological God?
No, not in the sense of the Judeo-Christian God. That is not the God.
Okay.
There is nothing but God. Amit Goswami, the quantum physicist, said he had studied and had worked to try to understand the universe and reality and what was happening in physics and quantum mechanics. And he said he finally came down to the realization that it dawned on him one day, there is nothing but God. In other words, when we look for God, we are in the mind of God. We are the mind of God. We ourselves are part of that mind, but that's the source of creation. And out of the source of creation then bubbles up all of the things that we experience. And so we can't separate ourselves from God, but there is no God outside of us. There's no old man with a long beard sitting on a mountain someplace. And that is a mythology. It was served primitive peoples, but it is not true. We know that today.
So what is our purpose here, sir? If we are born to die just in order to progress to the next level or the next part of our evolution, and yet on the other side, when we get there, we can actually talk to other people who have experienced this. So why do we need to come here and experience the trials and tribulations of life?
Yeah, and there are trials and tribulations, and that's the way that the Earth School is set up. We can't have those experiences without experiencing them. So in other words, people can tell us about it.
Sure.
Somebody could wave a magic wand and we could remember having experiences like that. But we can't really have the experiences until we have the experiences. And consciousness, and meaning all of consciousness that is all of humankind, can't grow experientially to become what it can become if we don't go through this period of time of going through the challenges, overcoming the challenges, learning from them, learning how to love and how to have compassion, how to accept other people. And if we don't go through the experience of learning those things, then we don't have that essence, that ability to love, that ability to have compassion. We have to go through the process of learning it. And in the Earth School, which is what we're in now, we have to grow up in Earth School starting as infants, and we learn all of the tricks and trades of the Earth School, but then we have to give them all up. And once we give them all up, then we can search and we can find that love and that compassion was behind all of what we had learned in Earth School. All we had to do was rip it away. And then once we took away the cloak, there was love and compassion. That's a large part of what we do in Earth School.
Are there other schools throughout the universe, or is the Earth School the school?
There are millions of them. And so there are different planes, and they say on the other side, the way they describe it is there are different planes and spheres. And what they're indicating by planes and spheres is that there are extraterrestrials, for instance, and that they are different spiritual beings, but they are part of the one consciousness. They are part of what we are. And so we could have we chose to incarnate on the Earth plane, and we chose to go through the experiences in Earth School. But we could have chosen another plane, and we could have chosen another sphere, we could have chosen other circumstances. But we do plan this life. So we planned it before we made the decision to incarnate. We knew about our families before they even married each other. We knew about them before they conceived the fetus that would become the body that we would use in this lifetime.
So we read the script.
Yeah, we read the script. We cheated. We read right to the last page, and we read the ending. And so we have become now, we are what it was that we had planned to become. And we're learning the lessons we had wanted to learn. We're going through the kinds of experiences we had decided we wanted to have, but we still have free will. We can still opt out. So it's possible for us to say, I'm not going to live this kind of life. I'm going to do what I want to do.
But if that happens, sir, aren't we upsetting the time-space continuum?
No, it's one of those things that we are evolving. Consciousness is evolving, but as we evolve right now in this now period of time,
right,
we are evolving the past, and we are evolving the future, and we are evolving everything that humankind can be, or will be, or has been.
But in order to look at it that way, sir, that means that individually we can change our destiny and our past without affecting any other destiny or path of any other being or consciousness.
That's right.
But that makes no sense.
Yeah, that's the way it is. What we can do is we will change consciousness, though. We will change the bigger C consciousness, the mind of God. We will change it to become more loving and compassionate by ourselves, becoming more loving and compassionate. On the other hand, if we are cruel and violent, then we change that big C consciousness to be a little more cruel and violent. So we are in that way affecting humankind. We are affecting consciousness. And as the world develops, as people, as humankind understands these truths that we're learning now, humankind will change, and it will evolve, and it will become more loving and compassionate. And that will make all the difference in the world.
Why do our deceased want to communicate with us if we get to see them in the future? What is the necessity, and won't what they tell us affect what the mission is that we're on here in on this plane, on this planet, in this Earth school?
Yes, and the first question, why do they communicate with us? They continue loving us just the way that they did before.
Right.
It's rather like they just got on a plane and they're living in a different country, but they still love us just as much. They're carrying on with their lives, but they want to have contact. They want that telephone call from that other country to come through. So they want to know that we're okay, and they want us to know that they're okay. Now, it is true that they have a different perspective, so they know that life continues, that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience, that we are infinite, that we will have that reunion in the future. But at the same time, they still know that we are on Earth missing them, and they wish that they could have experiences with us on the Earth plane. So there is a desire to have that kind of communication. But as far as whether the communication is going to affect us in Earth School, they can communicate with us, and in fact they do communicate with us, and we also get communication from guides, helpers, and others. And these things are cues, they're helping, they're heuristics, they're ways of enabling us to go through our period of time on Earth School most fruitfully, and they don't interfere, though. They can't then just tell us, but they do sometimes. For instance, you'll hear the voice. The voice is when somebody they're driving down the road, and all of a sudden they hear the voice, and it says to them, don't go into that intersection. And that's a very common phenomenon, and that's because the person on the other side has been given permission to be able to help that person to avoid that accident that would have happened by giving them the voice, by saying, don't go into that intersection. We get the voice, we get communication all the time. They're always communicating with us. They want to communicate with us because they want to continue the relationship. We can still have an ongoing relationship with those who have crossed on to the next realm of life. All we have to do is learn how to communicate.
But isn't there something else that they would rather be doing than just trying to communicate with us all the time? Like, what is their... All right, they've been to Earth School, they've gone back to the consciousness, or consciousness central for a lack of better words. Is that all they need to do, is communicate with us? What's the objective? What is the higher plan?
They do have their own lives, and they actually have occupations, so that they will do, many of them, one of the things that they had always wanted to do. I don't know if you've seen Groundhog Day.
Oh, sure, with Bill Murray. Yeah.
Well, that's a really good example of what happens, but you don't reincarnate in that way, so people don't come back as that same person. But the fact that he wanted to learn how to play the piano, and so he did learn how to play the piano, and then we are able to do what we want to do on the next plane of life. People have occupations, Some of them are helpers who are helping people who cross over. Others are working as decorators in houses and building houses, and they have occupations.
Well, wait a sec. Hold on. Are you telling me that in the next level there are physical houses, there are physical jobs? It sounds a lot
Yes.
like this Earth School.
It is exactly like Earth School. So in other words, this spiritual plane continues on the next spiritual plane, but it's enhanced. It's greatly enhanced. Things are much better there.
I'm
But
having a hard time understanding the words physical plane, and then we're talking about physical houses, and then there's jobs. That doesn't seem to work together for some reason.
yeah, it doesn't intuitively people
Right.
because we haven't been reared to believe that. We haven't been. I mean, we think of people going to the next realm of life and worshiping God all day long and strumming hearts on clouds, and so that's all a mythology. The fact of the matter is that this spiritual plane that we're on, the earth plane, and the next spiritual plane that we're on they're very much the same. And the reason is because we really need that continuity. When we go over to the next plane of life, we're going to be really freaked out if the next plane of life is very
Right.
different. You know, if I go on to the next plane of life and it's full of people in igloos, you know, Inuits, and they're living their Inuit lives there, and that's not what I want. What I want is I want to be able to see houses like I have. I want to see my mother and my father in a house, and very often when people pass over, they are going to live in a house that was like the house they had as a child.
All right, Doctor, stand by. You and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. X Zone Nation, Dr. Craig Hogan is our special guest, and we're talking about the afterlife and afterlife communication this hour here in the X Zone. For more information about Dr. Hogan and the Afterlife Institute, visit www.afterlifeinstitute.org. This is the X Zone. I'm Rob McConnell. We'll be back on the other side of the news. Don't go away. Welcome back to the X Zone. I'm Rob McConnell. You're listening to us around the world on the X Zone Broadcast Network and on the X Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Before we get back to our guest, Dr. Hogan, we're talking about this in this hour, you know, afterlife studies, afterlife communication, and much more. A reminder about some of the other great shows we have here on the X Zone Broadcast Network. We have A Different Perspective with Dr. Kevin Randall. We have Paranormal Stakeout with Larry Lawson. Mission Evolution with Gwilda Wiyaka. Connecting with Coincidence with Dr. Bernie Beitman, M.D. Know the Name, Know the Genius in You with Sharon Lynn Wyeth. And Too Good to Be True with Justina and Peter Marsh. For the entire broadcast schedule, visit www.xzbn.net. Dr. Craig Hogan is our guest. Once again, his website is www.afterlifeinstitute.org. You know, Doctor, I've been listening over the last half hour, and this is very interesting material that you and the other members of the Afterlife Institute are into and, you know, spreading the word. But on another plane, it sounds a lot like religious philosophy. Because we're talking about, you know, the names are different, but it seems the concept is the same.
There are things about the religions that they have intuited that are correct, but most of what they've intuited is not correct. And so much of what we do is to try to correct the misconceptions that people have.
It seems that what the Institute is trying to do is to modernize the religious philosophy and bring it into New Age terminology.
Yeah, and it is 21st century terminology, and you're right. We have learned so much now. There is a science of the afterlife, and we have the people who are the scholars in the afterlife and who are writing the books and doing the studies, and these people are MDs and Ph.D.s and physicists, and there are people who would before have been considered scientists, materialist scientists, that they wouldn't have believed in such a thing. But those who have gone into the study of the afterlife and afterlife communication and have really allowed the evidence to take them where it would take them have come away realizing that the afterlife is a reality, that what we are is we are eternal beings. We're having a physical experience, but it is something which is this is a joyful time, and even the transition from this life and the next life is a rebirth. And it's a joyous time that families should be sharing together when the person passes into the next life.
How do we know, sir, that this consciousness and this this way of looking at the afterlife that we've been discussing over the last half hour is really true. It's just not another mythology, a mythology for the times, so to speak. How do we know this is really real? What is the evidence?
Yeah, and what we do is, because it's a science, now we are looking for corroboration.
Mm-hmm.
So what we want to see is we want to see that from a great variety of sources, they're all coming up with the same conclusions. We want to see the same facts from different sources throughout time and throughout geographical areas and cultures. And what we're finding is there's a really wonderful website called afterlifedata.com. And they have done a tremendous amount of work. They have vast libraries of information on the afterlife from the sources that we have. And they have found a 97% consensus among all of the sources about the afterlife and what we know about the afterlife now.
But wouldn't it be safe to say, sir, that the 97% is based on people who are believers in the afterlife and not the mass population? And if the mass population isn't included in these figures, how would the figures skew differently?
The sources that we're getting are actually the sources from the other side. So when I say sources, I'm not talking about the people on this side. I'm talking about the people on the other side. So we're getting them coming through from the other side, and the people on this side are just like transcribers. You know, they're just mediums who are letting the information come through.
So how can we take anything from the other side as evidence and fact?
Because of the fact that it's corroborated, and we get it from a great variety of methods, of means. We have instrumental transcommunication, which means we use instruments such as video and recording. We have mental mediumship, physical mediumship. And you mentioned about the masses of people, and whether it's coming from them or not. We are having parents now who are learning how to communicate with their children. And you'll see, if you get on Amazon.com, you'll find dozens of books by parents who have written books about their communication with their children. And these, because of the fact that it's a parent communicating with the child, you know that that's a reality. You know.
All right, now can you explain to our audience what you mean by communicating with their child?
They communicate with their child through mediums, and sometimes the mediums are mental mediums, meaning they're getting them through their mind.
Right.
Sometimes they're physical mediums, which means that the people can actually materialize in a room, and they can talk to them in the room. And I've been in these materialization medium seances in which the people have materialized and stood in front of us and talked to us.
Now, has that been recorded? Has it been validated?
Yes. Yeah. So we have the validations of that. We have the recordings. There are recordings now in infrared, as well as recordings in audio, and some of them now are being recorded in full light. So we are getting the recordings from them in various means, and they've been validated. The medium, who is a physical medium, is confined to a chair, is strapped to a chair, and everyone who comes to the seance then will examine the chair, examine the straps. They're zip tied to the chair so they can't get out. So we know that it isn't the medium. Their mouths are bound with tape. In the case of Leslie Flint, who was a direct voice medium, they actually gave him pink liquid to put into his mouth, and then he had to spit it out afterwards, and just to prove that he had not been using his voice. They put a throat microphone on him to prove it wasn't his voice. And so we've had validations of the fact that these are the people coming through, and they have wonderful things to say to us. So that's just another area of validations.
Now, when you were talking about communication between parents and the children, you're naturally talking about children who have passed away or died or were stillborns or prior to birth. What are we talking about here?
Yeah, we're talking about the children who have passed away. And the communication is with the children, and it can be children of any age.
Right.
It can also be children who have not come to term for any reason, for abortion, for stillbirth, anything. We know that those children, if they're loved by the parents on this side, they are born into the next realm of life, on that next plane of life, and they then are reared there. They actually grow up there. And the reunion that happens when the parents come over to the next plane of life, the reunion is with that child who has grown up and is the age that the child would have been on the earth plane. Now, and we have those recordings too.
Okay, now if a child who, let's say, dies at a very young age, goes to the next plane, and their spirit evolves to being a person. When mom and dad pass, then they're met by the person who's on the other side, who would be the actual age today compared to when they passed away. Does the person keep on getting old? How does the age work? Because once again,
sure,
if on the other side you keep on getting older, what do you turn into?
Yeah. Well, what happens is on the other side, a person who is elderly, for instance, a person who is in advanced adulthood, then will have the body that they just would have preferred to have. They don't have to ask for it. It's simply something that they have as their body. And the body is usually in their 20s and 30s. So we know that these people then are at that level. The children who go over and grow up on the next plane will grow up into that level, into that age. And so then the people who are living there are in the prime of life. There is no beginning and no ending. There is no ending to it. So we don't have to worry about them maturing and then going into the next realm. They can stay there. We have there's a book by Anthony Borgia that I recommend for everybody called Life in the World Unseen. And in Borgia's book, he takes people through the afterlife and what it's like there, and takes them on tours. And there is a person there who said he has been there for 1,000 of Earth's years. And we have Leslie Flint, who was the medium from the 20th century, who had people come through in his seances. And Confucius came through. We had soldiers from the Roman Empire come through, and they were all the individuals, and they had not gone on to be something else. They had stayed in the next realm of life.
But what about the people, for example, before humanity of that we know, Confucius, the Roman Empire? What about Neanderthals? Are they also there, or is this consciousness very selective on who gets in and who doesn't get in?
We've never communicated with a Neanderthal.
Why not?
We have never had that instance. And most of the reason for that is the fact that the people who communicate with us are our loved ones. So they're people who are from the recent past. But those who do communicate, like those from the Roman Empire or those from Egypt, ancient Egypt, when they communicate with us, they are historically significant to us. And so we communicate with them. We have not had any instances in which somebody's communicated with a Neanderthal.
Well, what about Molly, the milkmaid who worked at a farm in Devonshire, England? Why is it always somebody famous or somebody that is known? Why isn't it just sometimes a member of the public who wants to make the communication?
Yeah, and that does happen. And Leslie Flint, the medium I was telling you about from the 20th century, had people come through in order to help us to understand what happens in the afterlife. But he had a great variety of people come through. He had a man who was a highwayman.
Right.
He had a hangman come through and describe what happened to him. He had a woman who was a Salvation Army worker.
All right, Craig, I hate to do this, but we've got to take our final break. Please stand by. And Exonation, when we return, we'll wrap up this hour with our special guest this hour, Dr. Craig Hogan, his website, afterlifeinstitute.org. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Dr. Craig Hogan is my guest, www.afterlifeinstitute.org. First of all, Doctor, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a great pleasure talking to you. My question to start off this segment is, how do we know that what people experience when they communicate with the other side just isn't part of grief?
Yeah, the messages that people get are very often messages that they need that they don't want to get. So that they will get advice from the people who are coming through on the other side, and they will be words that they don't want to hear, but that they're words that they need at this stage in their life, and it helps them, it instructs them, gives them a way, a path that they can go through to improve their life. So it isn't that the individual who's getting the messages is getting the messages that he or she would have made up, or that they would have come to them. The other thing is, they tell us things from the other side that we just would not have known.
Such as?
So there is one instance in which a person went through what's called a self-guided afterlife communication session. In a self-guided, we actually teach them how to to put themselves into a state of mind in which they can have an afterlife communication. Anyone can do it. It's free, it's online, and we teach people how to do it. So in this instance, the person who was having a self-guided afterlife communication was having a conversation with with her mother, and during the conversation, then suddenly she saw a little girl. And little girl, got the sense that the little girl was saying her name was Brenda. She was wearing an apron, and she was cooking, and she was making what looked like roll-ups, which are these doughs that you roll things into, and she was putting jalapeno peppers in them, of all things. And so the woman then realized that this Brenda was the child of a friend of hers, and the child had passed away. And so as soon as she finished this session, when she got out of having this self-guided afterlife communication, she then called the woman and said, I just saw what looked like your daughter Brenda, and she had an apron on, and she described the apron, and the woman said, oh yes, that was her apron. And she said, well, she was cooking, and she said, oh yes, we used to love to cook together. And then the woman said, but the craziest thing is, I saw her putting jalapeno peppers into a roll-up. That's the weirdest thing I'd ever seen. And the woman said, oh no, we always used to do that. We loved putting jalapeno peppers into roll-ups. We have dozens and dozens of those kinds of testimonies from people things they couldn't have known.
What is the state of mind that a person has to be in to have a communication with a deceased loved one?
All they have to do is be receptive. So what that means is we have to shut down the physical realm, and you can do that in meditation. You can do that through self-hypnosis. And once you shut down the physical realm, and you open yourself, and you're willing to receive the communication, the communicators are always there because they know you're trying. And so when you try to communicate, then when you ask a question, for instance, or make a statement, the first thing that comes into your mind is going to be their response, because they respond very quickly. Sometimes they respond before you finish asking the question. And so what happens is people just have to get used to that. They just have to get used to speaking to the people who are living on the next plane of life in a different way through using the mind, and that means relaxing to the point where you don't have the physical realm getting in the way, and there's not a noise, and you can do it in meditation, you can do it through self-hypnosis. And once you've done that, then you allow those messages to come through. You make statements, you ask them things, you begin the conversation, and immediately they will communicate back with you.
Is there a connection, in your opinion, sir, between afterlife communication and those who seek ghosts in the paranormal?
Yeah, now when we talk about ghosts, there are different varieties of spirits. And one of them is if there's in a house, for instance, that is a haunted house, if there is some ghost that repetitively does the same things over and over again, then that's a memory on the ether. In other words, there's no spirit there. That's a memory that that the ether holds, the ether that's surrounding the earth holds. There are, though, others who are earthbounds, which means that they have gone out of the body, but their minds are still on the earth plane. And the earthbounds then can be there for centuries. And they can be there for a variety of reasons. One of them can be that they have unfinished business, that they want to stay around a loved one. It can be that they're mischievous, and those are poltergeists. Those are the ones who do the mischief and throw things around rooms and make scratches on people's bodies. So there are different kinds of ghosts. But then what we're talking about is communication with loved ones who have gone on. So they have left the earth plane. Their minds are no longer on the earth plane, but they come back because they get our thoughts. They're always connected to us through our thoughts.
So why don't these other spirits go past the earth plane? Why do they remain?
Well, a lot of them do it because they get a kick out of it. For instance, an arsonist who passes into the spirit realm would want to stay on the earth plane because he wants to light more fires. He can't do that if he goes on.
But how can a spirit light fires?
What he does is he finds people on the earth plane who are arsonists themselves, or who have tendencies, and he influences them through his thoughts, through its telepathy, and he influences them through his thoughts to light fires. He's telling you through his thoughts. He says, "What? Look at that building. Can you imagine what it'd be like if you had fire engines coming up and it was in flames?" And he influences them. So we have people who are alcoholics, who are surrounding people who are alcoholics in spirit, who are surrounding people who are alcoholics on this plane of life, and arsonists and violent offenders, and there are those people who are earthbound who are just getting their kicks. And that's the reason they stay earthbound. They don't want to go on. And the other ones are there because they may have a loved one who's grieving.
But doesn't that go against what the evolutionary progression of consciousness would be?
Yeah, and they eventually will go on. So they can't stay there forever. And so they eventually will go on. And there are counselors who are trying to get them to go on. Mm-hmm. On the other side, counselors on the other side who are trying to get them to go on. And we do have counselors on this side, people who will try to rescue them. They are rescuers. And so they'll actually go into the state of mind in which they can communicate with these people who are earthbound. These are people who are living on this plane of life, but they can go into that spirit realm and they can help to rescue them by convincing them that they need to go on. They need to go on to the next realm of life, and that they shouldn't stay in this realm.
So that would validate the claims of exorcism.
Yes. So in other words, in exorcism, it's not that a spirit can possess in the sense of taking over a person on this plane of life, but what they can do is they can have such a great influence on them, especially if somebody who is weak on this plane of life, then they can have such an influence on them that it's like they were possessed. And so in exorcism, then we can get rid of that spirit. A medium, there are mediums who are able to help people to go beyond people on this side of life, to go beyond that stage, to be able to get rid of that spirit and to help that spirit go out of their life. So there are ways in which we can help people to get rid of these spirits. We just have to have them understand that they are people, they are individuals.
But if we're saying that religion is a mythology, how can we then say, well, exorcism works if it's based on a mythology?
Yeah, and it is an exorcism that's religiously based. In fact, the exorcisms are done by mediums.
Oh, and not in all cases, sir. Not in all cases.
Yeah, and there are Roman Catholic priests, especially, who do exorcisms, and they have mixed success. And the reason they have mixed success is because those who are earthbound are not bound by anything that a Catholic priest does. They will continue to do what they do if they want to.
Right.
But on the other hand, they will realize if they come into that situation that they are not wanted. They may not have realized that before. They realize they're not wanted, and so many of them will leave just because of the fact that it's inhospitable for them. They're not wanted. They finally realize that that's true, and they will go.
So why would a medium have better? Why would a medium have better success?
Well, the medium is able to find out why the person's there. So why is that person in the house? Why is that poltergeist there? And what is it that they're trying to communicate? Right. And then sometimes the family that lives there can make arrangements with the poltergeist so they don't have to leave. For instance, saying that the poltergeist is only going to stick around during the daytime or something like that, and it's not going to frighten guests who come in. But the medium is able to communicate with this person who is in spirit, who is a mind living on the physical realm, and is able to then communicate with them and help them to go on, or else help them to negotiate something with the people who are living there.
Dr. Hogan, the time when you and I must say so long has come. Quickly let our listeners know how they can find out more about you and how they can find out more about the Afterlife Institute.
Yeah, I would love to have anybody who wants to go to afterlifeinstitute.org, and you can communicate with me through that. You can also send me email if you want at r.craig.hogan@afterlifeinstitute.org.
Dr. Craig Hogan, thank you very much, sir. Continued success, and we look forward to the next time you and I meet here in the X Zone or on the other side. All right, X Zone Nation, I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Are you a believer or, like me on this one, a skeptic? I don't know. just didn't make sense. Kind of looped around, going nowhere. But it takes a lot to convince me now, doesn't it, Exo Nation? We'll be back on the other side as we continue this investigation into the world of the paranormal, the science of parapsychology. After all, this is the X Zone Broadcast Network, where we're always searching for answers, but demanding the truth.